What happens when two countries want to tear each other apart, but they can't go to actual war against each other? The short answer is a trade war. Trade wars can get pretty brutal, but they don't really have to be. These days, there is a shift towards a new battleground. What is this new battleground, and why is it potentially the answer to the pesky problem of trade wars? Is it the future of economics? Keep watching to find out. A trade war is basically when one country decides to hit back at another by jacking up import tariffs or throwing some restrictions on the other country's imports. Now, these showdowns usually start when one nation feels like its competitor is playing dirty in the trade game. Sometimes it's the local trade unions or those industry influencers who lean on politicians to make foreign stuff less cool for consumers, kind of pushing things towards a trade war. And believe it or not, sometimes it's just because both countries aren't quite getting how awesome free trade can be. These trade wars are often seen as an accidental side effect of protectionism. Protectionism is basically a country's way of saying they're going to start keeping everything in-house to protect their own businesses and jobs from their foreign rivals. Protectionism is a strategy traders often use to deal with trade deficits. When a country's imports start outweighing its exports, that's when a trade deficit happens. Now, let's talk a bit about tariffs. These are simply taxes slapped on any goods brought into a country. In a global economy, going into a full-blown trade war can really mess things up for regular people and businesses in both nations. And the fallout can mess with a whole bunch of intricate mechanics in their economies. When a trade war kicks off in one industry, it often spills over into others. It's like a domino effect that spirals more and more out of control. And it's not just the two countries involved that suffer for it. It can drag others into the mess too. That's the thing with protectionism. It can lead to a back and forth battle of import restrictions. Now, trade wars are different from other trade-related like sanctions. Trade wars are all about trade, while sanctions might have some do-gooding mixed in. Apart from tariffs, protectionist actions can involve things like putting limits on imports, setting clear product standards, or providing government support to discourage outsourcing. Trade conflicts aren't a recent thing. They've been happening throughout history as long as nations have been trading. For instance, back in the 17th century, colonial powers were squabbling over who got exclusive trading rights with overseas colonies. The British Empire has quite a history of these trade disputes. Take, for example, the Opium Wars with China in the 19th century. The British had been shipping opium from India to China for years until the Chinese emperor said, "Enough is enough." Diplomacy failed to resolve the issue, so the emperor sent troops to seize the contraband. But the British Navy, being quite powerful, came out on top, leading to more foreign trade in China. In 1930, the United States put into effect the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act to shield American farmers from European agricultural products. This move jacked up tariffs to around 40%. In response, other nations hit back by slapping higher tariffs on American goods, causing global trade to take a nosedive. As the U.S. plunged into the Great Depression, partly due to these trade policies, President Roosevelt started passing a bunch of acts to ease trade restrictions, including the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act. Fast forward to January 2018. Former President Trump rolled out a series of tariffs covering everything from steel and aluminum to solar panels and washing machines. These tariffs didn't just affect goods from the European Union and Canada, but also from China and Mexico. Canada countered with a set of temporary duties on American steel and various other products. The EU also slapped tariffs on American agricultural imports and other goods, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles. By May 2019, tariffs on Chinese imports hit nearly $200 billion worth of goods. In typical fashion for trade conflicts, China fired back with hefty duties on American imports. An International Monetary Fund study later revealed that U.S. importers of goods mainly bore the brunt of those tariffs on Chinese products. Eventually, These costs are passed on to American consumers through higher prices, which goes against the intended goals of the trade war. While running for president in 2016, Donald Trump didn't hide his dislike for many of the current trade deals.
We're going to renegotiate NAFTA, probably the worst trade deal ever agreed to, signed in the history of the world.
He made big promises to bring back manufacturing jobs that had been shipped off to countries like China and India. Once elected, he really pushed for a more protectionist approach. He even floated the idea of the United States pulling out of the World Trade Organization, which is the global group overseeing trade among 164 countries. Then, in early 2018, Trump got tougher, especially with China. He started talking about hefty fines for supposed intellectual property theft and slapped on some significant tariffs. China fired back by imposing a 25% tax on more than 100 U.S. products. In 2018, both countries kept going back and forth with threats, tossing around lists of proposed tariffs on various goods. China later went on to shoot itself in the foot after it responded with tariffs of its own, which ended up hurting their manufacturers and slowing down their economy. But in December, they both decided to take a break from adding new taxes, extending this tariff war ceasefire into 2019. By spring of that year, it seemed like China and the U.S. were getting close to a trade deal. However, things took a different turn at the beginning of May. Chinese officials suddenly got tougher in negotiations, refusing to budge on their support for local companies and insisting on getting rid of the current tariffs. The president didn't take kindly to this change of heart, and on May 5, 2019, he announced that he was cranking up the tariffs from 10% to 25% on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports starting on May 10th. Seems like the president might have felt pretty confident about this move, partly because at the time the U.S. trade deficit with China had dropped to its lowest level since 2014. China decided to stop buying farm products from state-owned companies in retaliation. They also lowered the value of the yuan against the dollar, which hadn't happened in over a decade. This led to concerns about a currency war. Eventually, the United States and China realized this wasn't helping anyone and agreed to a trade deal signed on January 15, 2020. But then, the COVID-19 pandemic came along, threatening to make things worse between the two countries. This battle between the United States and China was a perfect example of how trade wars usually don't work out well for all parties involved. In other cases, trade wars suggest a lack of export quality. On the other hand, investing in skills development can give a country a competitive edge and benefit local communities. Instead of blaming and starting trade wars, countries should first focus on improving their own workforce through skills development to better handle global trade challenges. In the intense race of export performance, no nation can dodge the struggle of leveling up their internal skills. It's like they've got to choose between rolling up their sleeves and upping their skills game, or just taking a back seat. The ongoing global trade situation is putting around 200 nations to the test. The aim is basically to see who will eventually have the best export game. Skills wars are all the rage these days, and for good reason. In this turbocharged world, getting a handle on workforce shortcomings is the hot new skill to have. Figuring out this big gap is practically an art form. Encouraging folks to level up their skills, that takes some serious courage. And those open debates to tackle these issues, that's the path modern leaders have to walk if they want their nations to survive the economic storm. This whole situation happens in everyday life too. Universities drop the ball, leaving students high and dry. Just think about all those MBA grads drowning in debt. Government bureaucracies, they've let down the little guys. Think about the billions of small and medium-sized businesses trying to make ends meet. The current climate is shifting from hard work to smart work, and now even smarter machines are in the mix. The world is moving quickly towards global age skills, leaving the average working class far behind, looking for answers and getting restless. Upcoming elections are shaping up as new battlegrounds for those responsible for local economies. The citizens of major developed countries who have once been fooled by fake economic promises and conflicts are now demanding genuine change and grassroots prosperity. These new battlegrounds don't require armies of soldiers, but rather well-trained, everyday people ready to meet the demands of global productivity and competitiveness, keeping up with global age work standards. It's all part of the global shift toward top-notch skills. First world countries can't afford to perform at third world levels anymore, especially when third world nations are quickly catching up. All in all, this generation officially marks an end to all trade wars. The future belongs to those who have skills.